wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
Good morning. Welcome to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. I'm Representative Mike Derby. I'm the lead co-chair, along with my co-chair, Senator Otten. And as we start every morning with the Pledge of Allegiance, Senator Howard, would you please lead us? Thank you. Thank you, Senator Howard. I'd like to welcome all the internet listeners and everybody watching on South Dakota Public Broadcasting. Remind everybody, please make sure your cell phones are off. And lobbyists must be wearing badges for the organization they're representing. Testifiers must sign the guest register and have pages distribute any handouts they may have. And all testimony and questions will be addressed through the chair. This time I'd like to ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons. Auk.
Here.
Casson. Moore. Vilhauer. Carly. Voida. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Here.
Mucky. Zickman. Colbeck.
Here.
Norstrup.
Here.
Lapke.
Here.
Otten.
Here.
Derby.
Here.
Carly here.
17 present, 1 absent.
All right, thank you very much. And we have pages today. Would you please come up to the front and turn the microphone on and introduce yourselves? Tell us where you're from and what your future is and your favorite hobby. Welcome, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Whitney Martinson. I was in appropriations this Monday. I'm a senior at Watertown High School, looking at going to Georgetown University next year for public policy.
Yep.
And a hobby of mine is speech and debate.
Yeah, fantastic.
Hello, my name is Abigail Lewis. I'm a senior at Flanger Public High School, and next year I plan on attending Dakota State University for Network and Security Administration. And my favorite pastime is probably reading.
Explain that, what you're going to do. Network and what? What does that entail?
Network and Security Administration. So like
Cybersecurity.
IT, cybersecurity.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any introductions, personal privileges, or announcements at this time? And we have some minutes. Senator
Chair.
Zickman.
I move to approve the minutes of Tuesday, March 10th, 2026.
Second.
Motion by Senator Zickman, second by Representative Mucky. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, good to go. Okay, I'm going to lay out today's schedule, and we're going to finish some budget setting, and then part of it is we're waiting for Senate Bill 245 to be voted on in the Senate. So we're going to do as much as we can this morning, then we're going to have to come back. But I'll go through the schedule, and then we're going to recess. After I go through the schedule, we're going to recess for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have to have everybody step out for about 10 minutes, come back, we'll do a little JCA huddle, and then we'll kick it off. But we are going to land this plane today. Absolutely, 100%. The wheels are down. Okay, so this morning we're going to do the Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources, the Attorney General, and the Department of Social Services. We have to wait until this afternoon for the Department of Education for the levies in Senate Bill 245 to be adopted. So, and then for bill hearings, we're going to have introduction of bills, the JCA General Appropriation Bill, and bill hearings for Senate Bill 278 is to revise the General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2026. That's what we call the supplemental bill. When we get to that after the bill hearings, we'll get a briefing from our staff on kind of from the beginning, what is the supplemental bill, how did it start, where did the amendments come from, and then we will have the ability to approve that this morning. This afternoon, we'll have to wait for HB 1051. HB 1139 will be tabled. That's the governor's budget, and we do that kind of a 1-2 step. We'll table that right before we do House Bill 1326, which is the general appropriations bill. So that's kind of the process. And so at this time, I know it's a little herky-jerky, but if our audience could step out for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have you come back in. Thank you.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. from choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. Are there any personal privileges? Yes.
Some of the spouses of the legislators delivered some yogurt cups over there. If you guys are hungry for breakfast, you can grab the yogurt cups.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources, Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move B7, which is $150,000 in general funds, and I'll give a better explanation after we get a second to that.
We have a motion by Representative Northrup, seconded by Senator Vilhauer. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Chair, it is the funding for $150,000 is for general funds for increase in inspection, enforcement travel, lab testing fees, rents, and state matches for federal spill investigations, water, air quality, and pesticides programs. So the information that we're getting is that is some functions of the Department of Agriculture that they deem to be necessary, and I would ask for a yes vote on that.
Further discussion on the motion. Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would respectfully ask everyone to resist the motion. Just yesterday, so walking back through what happened yesterday and through Danner's budget hearing early on in session, they came to us with their budget. The HIMP program was being completely eliminated, but they were only asking to eliminate $200,000 along with the 3 FTEs. And if everyone remembers, during the committee hearing, I asked where was the other $150,000 that we had been funding them for that program. And initially the response was that that was going to help cover the cost of the 2 people that they were keeping on. Well, the 2 people that they're keeping on, because they're eliminating the 3 FTEs from the HIMP program, those 2 people have to be slid over into other FTE positions, which we are already funding. So when asked again what the $150,000 was, where was it? What was it going to be used for? They had the opportunity then to tell us if they had other expenses that needed to be covered, and they didn't. The response was it had been absorbed into their budget. And frankly, I'm disappointed. That is bad fiscal policy. The taxpayers expect better. Everyone knew I was bringing the motion sheet to remove that other ongoing $150,000. We passed that motion sheet yesterday, and now we're trying to undo what we did. And we're trying to justify it with a long list. You can see the long list of everything that's there. But I'm just going to say again, the taxpayers expect better of us. And I know the comment was made that we're punishing good behavior, and I would say the opposite is the case. So I would just ask that you resist this motion.
Further discussion on the motion to adopt B7. Any further discussion? Further discussion. Senator Carley.
Yeah, I just ask that you resist it as well. This was added overnight. That's not when we want to have motion sheets in. We want to have them in 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead, so I'd ask that you resist it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Auk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I strongly encourage you to resist this motion. Once again, we are asked as legislators to follow the rules, do as we're asked. We already voted on this. Please resist this motion. We are all about, I am all about transparency. I'm all about putting things out there, trying to do my very best to follow the rules. Anytime that we step out of line, we're put back in line. Let's follow the rules here. Let's resist this motion and make an example of the fact that this legislature was sent here by the voters to do what is right for the voters. So this is a It's $150,000. I know it's not a lot of money, but let's please resist this motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
No.
Casson.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Vilhauer. Carly.
No.
Boyda. Jorgensen.
Nay.
Howard. Foster. Pass. Sharda.
No.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
No.
Foster. Otten. Derby.
Aye.
It's 11 yeas, 7 nays.
The motion sheet B7 hereby passes. Okay, moving on to the Attorney General. Nope, we have to redo. Oh, I forgot one thing. Yep, Representative Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to set the budgets for Administration, Secretary of Agriculture, Agriculture and Environmental Services, Resource Conservation and Forestry, Animal Industry Board, American Dairy Association, Informational, Weed Commission, Informational, Oilseed Council, Informational, Soybean Research Promotion Council, Informational, Brand Board, Informational, Corn Utilization, Informational, Board of Veterinary Medicine Examiners, Informational, Pulse Crop Council, Informational, State Fair, Financial and Technical Assistance, Office of Water, Livestock Cleanup Fund, Informational, Regulated Response Fund, Informational, Petroleum Release Compensation, Release Compensation, Informational, at the level detailed in the Department of Agriculture and Natural Resource motion sheet, which includes $16,228,500 in general funds, $24,696,033 in federal fund expenditure authority, $57,484,871 in other fund expenditure authority, and 345.5 FTEs.
Is there a second? Representative Norstrup, motion, seconded by Senator Voida. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
No.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Vilhauer. Carly.
No.
Boyda. Jorgensen.
Nay.
Howard. Foster. Not here. Sharda.
No.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten. Derby.
Aye.
11 yeas, 6 nays, 1 absent.
The motion to set the budget for the Department of Ag and Natural Resources hereby passes. Okay, now we're moving on to the Attorney General.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move a request from the Attorney General for an increase of $99,370 in general funds and 1 FTE for a legal assistant position in the Attorney General's Rapid City office.
We have a motion by Representative Jorgensen, second by Representative Casson.
The Rapid City office currently houses 33 staff in total, including 6 full-time attorneys, 5 DCI agents, and the Western Unified Narcotics Enforcement Team, and Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Unit. The Rapid City office handles approximately 400 active criminal prosecution files at any time. Currently, the office only has 1 full-time legal assistant to provide support to all the staff there. Caseloads and prosecutorial responsibilities have grown to meet rising demands from law enforcement referrals and expanding court dockets in western South Dakota, especially as to drug-related prosecutions connected to the work of the Unified Narcotics Enforcement Team and violent crimes and property crimes associated with drug activities. To date, the Rapid City office has managed with one legal assistant by having prosecutors take on many of the paralegal and administrative duties themselves. This arrangement, however, diverts valuable time away from the core attorney responsibilities such as case preparation, legal research, and trial work. A new legal assistant would alleviate the need for this arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you. And who seconded that? Representative Casson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Discussion on the motion.
Yep, I think she made the case. I think this makes sense. I would encourage you to pass the motion sheet and pass the budget. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Chair. Yes, Senator Carley.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate this. On the Republican platform, it talks about peace through strength and rule of law, and that's what they want to add here. And I also appreciate that on this budget sheet, there's an offset in unutilized FTE, so it seems to offset the two numbers. So I appreciate that. I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore. Vilhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen.
Aye.
Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky. Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten. And Derby.
Aye.
18 yeas.
Motion to set the budget for the Attorney General hereby passes. Okay, I think what we'll do, let's take a 5-minute recess.
We're not going to pass the budget.
Oops, sorry.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the remainder of the governor's recommended budget and line item B4 for the Office of the Attorney General.
Senator Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to set the budgets for Legal Services Program, Criminal Investigation, Law Enforcement Training, 911 Training, Insurance Fraud Unit Informational at the levels detailed in the Office of the Attorney General motion sheet, which includes $20,523,382 in general funds, $6,459,400 in federal fund expenditure authority, $14,790,912 in other funds expenditure authority, and 220 FTEs.
Motion by Representative Norstrup, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore. Vilhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky. Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten. Derby.
Aye.
18 yeas.
And now we can do the motion to set the budget for the Attorney General hereby passes. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. 5 minutes.
SDPB brings you closer to your government with gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder.
I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. Our schedule will be, we are now going to do the Department of Social Services. As I mentioned earlier, the Department of Health will be after, Department of Education will be after session today. So moving on to Department of Social Services staff.
Bill Douglas, LRC staff. On the screen is the budget motion sheet or budget setting for the Department of Social Services. First, in administration, you have discretionary provider inflation, the FMAP change, and there are several budget transfers are going between budget units. And 082, you have the discretionary provider inflation, the FMAP. You have the percentage change. This is based on, this is for the Medicaid. Then you have SNAP. So federal law changed, the One Big Beautiful Bill changed that from 50-50 state federal to 75% state, 25% federal. The same bill also eliminated the nutrition education program. Big ones here, if you remember House Bill 1056, the SNAP waiver. This would be the funding for the SNAP waiver implementation. One here, this is what was presented, proposed by the governor's administration, and this is what is proposed based on the fiscal note. Mucky has a line item here for the increase for the temporary assistance for needy families. And then if we move down to medical services, we have the mandatory provider inflation. Vilhauer has a line item here to align Medicaid, align the Medicaid budget to actual utilization and expenses. And then there are a couple here for medical providers. One line item is for the critical access hospitals, and the other comes for the federal qualified health centers. This comes out of the Medicaid providers work group. 084, not much here. You have discretionary provider inflation, FMAP, and a few transfers. That's all been recommended by the governor. Then 085, you have utility costs. This is the food contract. That's for the Human Services Center. And then Representative Derby, you have several opioid line items dealing with the opioid settlement funding. You have a couple here for Pennington County and Sioux Falls, and then you have one general one for transformation grants. These three here are part of the same package, and this one here is separate. It's one total package. And the rest, 089, those are just boards that are using other funds. This is coming from the fees to run the boards. And that is the entirety of DSS.
Thank you. Before we start, go back to the opioid. Just so the committee knows, I will not be moving E12, E13, or E15. And we'll discuss more about that later, but I will not be moving those. We will be talking about E14 and the 9 million in other authority. We will be talking about that, but I will not be moving those other three. So let's go ahead and start at the top.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Voida.
could I move B12 at this time?
Yes, we have a motion by Senator Voida, second by Senator Howard.
Yeah, this motion would align the amount, like staff just said, with the LRC fiscal note. I think it's appropriate to go with this number at this time because it's going to be July 1 before the governor's office can even start working on the waiver, and then it has to be approved, and then they would start doing their monitoring and all of that stuff. So if they need more funds after it's approved, that's something that we can come back and look at, but I think it's good to go with B12 at this time.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Howard seconded it. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
No.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Vilhauer. Harley.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen.
Aye.
Howard. Foster.
Aye.
Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund.
Aye.
Kolbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
Derby.
Aye.
17 yeas, 1 nay.
Okay. Motion to accept B12 hereby passes. Okay, next one.
Mr. Chair.
Listen a minute. I see Howard up there. You want to discuss that? B13.
Mr. Chair, those are just the unutilized reductions that we've seen in other departments. So this one's same as the ones before.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Senator Howard. Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move B14.
We have a motion for B14. Is there a second? By Senator Miskimmons. Discussion on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm bringing this motion to you today to restore TANF benefits. The general fund number that's represented here is a 5% raise above the current maintenance of effort. In the general fund, the maintenance of effort for this program, we are currently at the minimum of $8.54 million. We receive additional federal funding on this program. Last year, there was a discussion of a fund swap, reducing general fund authority, replacing with federal fund authority, at a time when we had a challenging budget year. In years past, going back to 2021 through 2025, the range for the amount that the former governor had proposed and that was approved by the legislature ranged anywhere between 9.9 million in general fund authority to 12.5 million in federal fund or general fund authority. Last year we saw a reduction to perform a fund swap in a period of budget uncertainty. I'm asking the committee to approve this so that we can hold steady at the benefit levels we had prior to rules changes this past summer and engage in a discussion with the department about how we can move forward with the use of TANF reserves in the future. The TANF reserve right now, when we approved the fund swap last session, was sitting around $24 million. Right now, we are somewhere probably closer around $20 million is the approximate number. And so with that, I'm happy to discuss with the committee, but I ask for your support on B14. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would ask you to resist this motion. This goes against every principle that at least my party stands for in limited government. But I'm going to remind people what happened last year. We The executive branch put forward a proposal. We approved it in this body. We approved it legislatively as an entire body to implement a 30% cut to get down to maintenance of effort. We had been spending more than we were required in this welfare program for years. So I appreciate the executive branch bringing that forward. We implemented that. So it was a reduction in general funds. At the same time, we increased the federal fund authority in order so that the department could use TANF reserves to ease the reduction, to not make it a nosedive for the recipients, but to make it, a slow decrease. And then in rules review, we implemented the first 10% cut. We passed that in rules review. So this body passed the 30% reduction to get down to MOE. The legislature approved the 30% reduction to MOE. Rules review passed implementing the first 10% cut. This body is now debating whether to undo that, and I'm asking you to resist that. Even after the 10% reduction was enacted earlier this year, our average direct benefit amount is still comparable to other surrounding states and higher. We are higher than Nebraska and Iowa and barely under Minnesota, so we are still comparable. I also want to remind people that of the recipients on TANF, 72% are also receiving SNAP, 93% are also receiving Medicaid, 24% are also receiving LEAP, a low-income energy assistance program, 10% are also receiving child care assistance, and 33% are living in subsidized housing arrangements. So I know this has been put forward as taking care of people. We are taking care of people, and we are doing that quite well in this state. We do not need to undo what we did last year. And I'm just, people know I love Davy Crockett's speech to Congress, not yours to give. I will remind everyone, this is not yours to give. This is hard-earned taxpayer money that we first have to take from other people who are working hard to earn this, to keep food on their table and to keep a roof over their family in order to redistribute it. So I believe when we voted last year to get this down to maintenance of effort, we do not now, 1 year later, need to undo that. And I would ask you to please stand on the principles that you campaigned on and you ran on, and you tell your citizens that you vote for, and resist this effort to undo what we did and increase welfare in this state.
Further discussion, Senator Vilhauer.
I got a question for the prime on this. Representative, from a practical standpoint, tell us what this means to a qualified recipient now versus going forward, if you could.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Thank you for the question, Senator. So I'm going to try to qualify and just make sure I understand what you're, just for my own purposes of clarifying, are you talking about the benefits to an individual? Okay. So what happened last session, we had chosen a fund swap. We did not clarify, I think, any intent in that other than we were choosing a fund swap. At the time, prior to the cuts that were made in Rules Committee this summer, a family of 3 would have been receiving $696 per month. A family of 4 would have seen their monthly support at $781. Based on the cuts that were made this past summer in Rules, that family of 3 went from $696 per month to $626 per month. Family of 4 went from $781 to $703. And so in terms of practical terms for the committee's benefit, this motion sheet would restore us back to what those levels were prior to.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Representative Auk.
Thank you. Question for the sponsor. Eric, so, Mr. Senator, Representative Mucky, I apologize. So bringing this back is restoring it. Wouldn't it have made more sense to just bring this in a bill and do a one-time spending instead of adding it to the general budget, the general fund, meaning that we are going to spend this every year into the future, taking taxpayer money to give this back where we've already voted to right size the MOE, like you've stated. Why is this going into ongoing spending and not one time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a good question, Representative Hauk. So when we look at the TANF program, the reason why I brought this into the ongoing was to say the only levers that we really have to pull for this program are either looking at general fund, the MOE, expanding or increasing our amount that we put in general funds, or using TANF reserves. Now, what I try to accomplish with the motion sheet is to say, in this case, can we find a common ground to say, knowing there's going to be increasing recipient space, at least in the Department of Social Services detailed brief and their projection, are we able to accomplish what we need to using the levers we have available to us, general funds and federal funds? And that's the goal of this motion sheet in this case. I think, did I answer your question? Okay.
Follow up? So it's a difference of $696 prior to the cut, and then this body voted to bring it down to the MOE last year, which we've done. So we went from 696 for a family of 3 to 626 for a family of 3, 781 for a family of 4 to 703 for a family of 4. Well, my family is experiencing serious, I mean, we're having to cut back. We're having to tighten our belts. I mean, I think a lot of South Dakotans are having to tighten their belts too. And by all means, I do not want to see the people of South Dakota to suffer. But we voted as a body to reduce this. And I can't support this motion. I wish you would have brought it in a bill for one time. We could regroup, we could re-meet with the secretary, we could discuss this. This makes me very uncomfortable because we passed as a body to bring it in line federally, to bring these dollars to where they should be, and now we're basically undoing everything that we worked so hard to do last year. So for that reason, I cannot support your motion.
Representative Casson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the sponsor.
Yes.
Can you explain how TANF is, I guess, figured for each state, and how the population and who's counted and who's not?
Mr. Chair. So I can try to take a crack at that, Representative. And forgive me, I'm trying to do this off of rough math, so I'm just going to make sure if I can. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to pull that up for you quickly. So when it comes down to the calculation, roughly, we're talking about, and forgive me, actually, Representative, could I do a little bit of digging for you to get this for you? But as far as the calculation goes, I'm happy to get more information here if you like. So, thank you.
Senator Voida.
Well, I'm just going to go back to when we first kind of grouped up here as JCA, we split into work groups. We had the Medicaid work group, we had, I think there was one on education, and then we had the 5% cut one. And I just want to remind everybody, we asked DSS, we asked the governor's staff, we asked them, hey, what programs are we using that we are putting in over and above what the federal requirements are for this program? And let me remind everybody that it was really hard to find anything, because so much of this it's all federal stuff, and we have a executive branch right now at the federal level that was going through and trying to make cuts, and we're seeing a lot of that being passed on to the state. And now here we are saying, hey, we understand that there's cuts happening, but we want to stick some more general fund dollars back into this and go above and beyond the MOE yet again. And so it seems really counterproductive to the whole setup of the goal of that work group and everything that we're trying to do, everything the federal government's doing. And I think we need to just stick with what was passed through rules last year, or at the beginning of this year, and resist this motion.
Representative Mucky.
Mr. Chair, responding back to Representative Casson's questions, just pulling up at least rough math, or the rough explanation. Rough math would tell you, based on what I can find for you at this moment in time, when you look at the actual MOE and the basis for TANF funding, a lot of that was established in the 90s when TANF was created as a renamed program in welfare reform in 1996. So essentially the allocations and MOE requirements are based on past numbers from the early 90s, and defined that way. The maintenance of effort requirement hasn't changed since the program was established.
Senator Howard?
I'm just going to remind everybody, if this passes, we are going to make it so extremely difficult for DSS. Because of what we passed last year, we aren't undoing all of that. We're undoing what was implemented so far, but we passed a 30% reduction. Then in rules review, we implemented 10% of that. You're undoing that, but you aren't undoing. So what are we, DSS is going to be in limbo going, what do we do? They're going to run out of TANF reserves. They can't keep, we gave them that federal fund authority to use TANF reserves to do a slow glide slope to recipients, but we're undoing what we did. However, the larger 30% cut, we're undoing 10% of that. I'm telling you right now, what's coming next year is we're going to restore another 10%. We're going to restore another 10%. Eventually, we will undo every single thing that we did last year. So I'm going to ask you to, again, to resist this motion.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Senator Carley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do greatly respect the representative for bringing the spending increase, which does align with his Democrat Party platform. But for those of us here who support the Republican platform, that we are for limited government, personal responsibility, and property rights, I ask you to resist this motion. We are not ending this program, but rather this is a request to a major ongoing expansion of welfare and the redistribution of our South Dakota citizens' wealth. Please resist the motion.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
No.
Casson. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Aye. Carly.
No.
Boyda. Jorgensen.
Nay.
Howard. Foster.
Aye.
Sharda.
No.
Mucky. Zickmund. Aye. Kolbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
No.
Otten. Derby.
Aye.
11 yeas, 7 nays.
Motion B14 hereby passes. Okay, next one. C8. Medicaid enrollees and utilization. Senator Vilhauer. Motion by Senator Vilhauer, second by Representative Casson. Discussion on the motion.
Just a couple comments. This was a tough call for us. Our work group met on this. Appreciated the input from the LRC staff on this. Met with DSS personnel a 3 weeks ago. We just feel like realizing big numbers, both as to dollars, as to people served, but looking at areas where we think there is room for some reductions in expenses, and that's where the 7.1 million was arrived at, primarily as a result of decline of Medicaid expansions, group services.
Further discussion on the motion. Representative Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just point out that this is not a cut to any particular person's Medicaid. It is a change in the estimated utilization. And so it is not a cut that will impact anybody. And there's two possibilities. One is that we're right and things go on, or we could have overestimated. In that case, we'll come back a year from now and make adjustments within the budgets to solve that problem. But at this point, it's our best estimate, best guess, based upon conversations, that this is the correct number. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Vilhauer.
Mr. Chair, I would just express my thanks for a little better explanation of that, Representative. So I agree completely with what was just said.
I have a question, Senator Vilhauer. Is this 7.1 million? This is part of what we utilize to bake into our inflation. 1.4, correct. 1.4%. That's correct. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Vilhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Lucky. Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
Derby.
Aye.
18 yeas.
Motion to approve C8 hereby passes. Okay, Representative Casson.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move C13.
Motion by Representative Casson, seconded by Representative Mucky.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is goes to critical access hospitals and increasing the dollar figure. It holds harmless those hospitals above a certain percentage and increases the rate for those below. It makes a lot of sense. It came out of the work group, and I think it's a really good number and something that really helps the rural hospitals in the state of South Dakota.
Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the Medicaid work group members who came to this. We had 3 primary priorities. One of those was accomplished in House Bill 1250, which added critical access hospitals and the FQHCs to the 5-year rebase process. This is part of a process working in partnership with the executive branch to be able to preserve and support critical access hospitals around the state as we go through a methodology change and make sure that we're holding folks harmless in the process. So I appreciate your support for this.
Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask you to resist this motion. They're already above 94% of methodology, and I would recommend that we complete a rebasing before jumping on numbers that we don't even know if they're accurate. So thank you.
Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's important for the committee to understand with this process, as the department works with those hospitals to establish the methodology, they're working in a very palms-up process to be able to say, how do we define the rates? What Senator Howard shared as an aggregate is something I want to break apart a little bit to say we're talking about critical access hospitals in a lot of ways because of the location, services, what they might be doing. Their individual rate base may be different. And so I think it's important to state what we're trying to do here is to say for, at this point, anywhere between 28 to 31 critical access hospitals, their rate is above that level based on the proposed methodology. We're trying to make sure we're holding them harmless as we lift others in that process, which is a common practice when we go through the process of rebasing a health system. And so the aggregate number might be that, but we're talking about individual hospitals that might have a different rate. So happy to answer more.
Representative Casson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we were given a handout with critical access hospitals protected under what we're talking about in the motion sheets, and I figured we'll go through the locations: Custer, Flandreau, Webster, Redfield, Hot Springs, Canton, Del Rapids, Viborg, Phillip, DeSmet, Freeman, Clear Lake, Britton, Wessington Springs, Miller, Platte, Burke, Armour, Gettysburg. I don't even know where Bowdle is, but Bowdle, Scotland, Mitchell, Sturgis, Millbank, Aberdeen, Deadwood, Gregory, and Vermilion. So even though some of the hospitals might be in Aberdeen or one of those, they serve the rural communities that surround them. So again, I would encourage, this is part of keeping rural South Dakota have access to quality health care. And as you can see, this covers basically our entire state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Voida.
Well, I'm going to ask a clarifying question to whomever can respond, because multiple locations listed off there in my district. But it was my understanding that a lot of these small ones are already at above this isn't gonna touch them, right? Because they're already above it.
Yep, Mr. Chair, answering your question, so this would hold them harmless, so they would not be brought down in the process of lifting others up. That's what this does.
Further discussion? I would like to take this opportunity to thank Representative Mucky for chairing that Medicaid work group. A lot of great work came out of it, and this is one of the high priorities from that. So, thank you. We had a lot of great work groups. I think I've been around a while. I haven't seen as many work groups as productive as the ones we've had this year, and I want to thank everybody that participated on those. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, call a roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Aye. Carly.
No.
Boyda. No. Jorgensen.
Nay.
Howard. No. Foster. Aye. Sharda.
No.
Mucky. Aye. Zickmund. Aye. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten. Aye. Derby.
Aye.
13 yeas, 5 nays.
Motion to accept motion sheet C13 hereby passes. Okay, C14, Representative Casson. Can you redo that motion, please?
Yeah, I really screwed it up. I would request we move C14.
Motion by Representative Casson, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion.
Yes, this is another much-needed rate increase to a group that has largely been left out of these conversations in the past. I think it makes a lot of sense. And again, we're talking about health centers that are in the most rural parts of South Dakota and serve our most rural citizens and serve a heck of a lot of citizens, if you actually want to be frank with it. So makes a lot of sense.
Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Echoing again, thanks to the Medicaid work group. This is one of our top priorities. FQHCs are in the process of a rebase right now. At the current moment, if you were to not fund this, they're sitting at about 60% of their reimbursement cost, which is putting them in a position where they're feeling pressure to close locations, to downsize. For us to make sure that we're offering quality health care, and particularly this type of health care, primary care, dental, and behavioral health, primarily in rural South Dakota. This is a really vital priority for that work group, in particular as we talk about rural health transformation. If we don't do this, there's good likelihood over time that we would lose these types of health centers in rural South Dakota and not be able to maximize our rural health transformation funding. And so I encourage your support today of C14. Thank you.
Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would ask you again to resist this motion. They need to complete the rebasing process. Yes, they may be a little low in methodology, but that should spur us on to do the rebasing and not just simply do this without having accomplished that first.
Representative Casson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little more clarity in rural communities. Health centers supported communities' ability to retain local health care options, supporting access to health care where rural South Dakotans live and work. South Dakota's network of 6 health center organizations provide care to over 126,600 patients each year at 38 locations in 31 communities across South Dakota. And just to name a few, Elk Point, Alcester, Yankton, Sioux Falls, Howard, Brookings, Aberdeen, DeSmet, Woonsocket, Mitchell, Plankton, Wessington Springs, Huron, Highmore, Fort Thompson, Kennebec, Chamberlain, Presho, White River, Mission, Martin, Oneida. Here's a new one, I'm learning more. LaPlante, Isabel, Eagle Butte, Faith, Bison, and Rapid City. So again, as we continue to work towards increasing rural healthcare access and making it so that these folks can that these places can actually stay open. I mean, it's 60%. A lot of these places are going to close. So this is very important. I would encourage your yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the sponsor. I'm wondering how you came up with the money numbers and how it's going to be distributed. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to clarify, Representative, this is the rebase that we're looking for this. What these monies do is it's primarily providing the provider reimbursement rate that goes out to those primary federal qualified health centers. So it's distributed in the full budget. It's distributed out to all of those federally qualified health centers based on the reimbursement for their providers. Does that make sense?
Follow up.
Follow up, thank you. So how did you come up with these particular numbers, the 6 million overall? How did you come up with that?
So, Mr. Chair, so here's where we are right now. So when we looked at the numbers for a rebase process, DSS had proposed a number based on their estimation of what the FMAP match is for federal match at around $4 million general funds and about the same amount in federal funds. When we looked at the FMAPs, FQHCs have some enhanced FMAPs in certain areas, and so when we try to seek a number that would make sense to them, the number may not be $4 million in general funds, but the number closer to probably $3.5 million in general funds. The federal figure represents the FMAP that the federal government matches for Medicaid reimbursement.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Senator Voida.
I guess I just have a quick question for those that were on the work group. Is this, both of these that we are just talking about right now, is this something that BFM and the Secretary of DSS was lockstep wanting to move forward with the work group?
Commissioner Twilliger, would you like to address that question?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Jim Twilliger with the Bureau of Finance and Management. So the FQHC rates, this is actually something that was reviewed pretty heavily through the budget process even last fall. And so we had a lot of deliberation about this, recognize this as a need. But when we were coming up with the final proposal with the governor's recommendation, knowing that things were looking a little tighter then and we were at a 0% proposal, we simply didn't have the funds to put towards this purpose. But coming into legislative session, it was something that we recognized as a need in an area to consider. And so as things have played out, I think the answer is yes. We recognize this as a need and think it's good that the committee is addressing this.
Follow up? No? Good. Okay. Yep. Senator Carley.
Yeah, question for the sponsor. So we approved earlier a significant amount of money for the rural health transformation. I heard a lot of rural health mentioned in this particular line item. We're going to have access to those funds in, I think, the next less than 6 months. Why shouldn't we wait to have those funds access some of those? I looked at the program details, a lot of the similar things that were just mentioned with this program.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, rural health transformation funds cannot be used for rate replacement. So these are rates. They cannot use you cannot use those funds to replace provider rates.
Follow up.
Just follow up on that. Can other things that are covered through rural health fund an element that allows transferring or saving of those dollars so that then it can be used for those rate increases?
Representative Casson.
Mr. Chair, as I understand it, no. These are just rates through that are matched through FMAP.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Okay. Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Vilhauer. Carly.
No.
Boyda. Jorgensen.
Aye.
Howard. Foster.
Aye.
Charda.
No.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund.
Aye.
Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
And Derby.
Aye.
15 yeas, 3 nays.
Motion to pass C14 hereby passes. Okay. Okay. E14, I'm going to have, well, let's move this, and then I'll have the secretary come up and, we'll do this discussion first. Ms. Secretary, you want to come up and talk about the 9 million and other funds that are being requested for the opioid settlement project grants? Whoever wants to answer that.
Mr. Chair, Jim Twilliger, the Bureau of Finance and Management. Yeah, there's been discussions about, opioid settlement funds here in the last week or so. So right now, just to kind of overview, my understanding there's been about, and then there's state funds, and then there's funds that go directly to local governments as well. There's been about $24 million received. About half of that has been allocated or obligated. And so I believe the 9 million in additional authority that's being contemplated in E14 would just allow the existing funds right now to be played out through the existing process. There's a committee that reviews all the applications that come through. As part of that, the opioid settlement strings out all the way throughout, I think, 2040. Recently, we've been getting approximately $4 million a year, give or take, from those settlement funds. And so I believe that's an intent of E14, and I think it's fine to move forward with that.
Okay, thank you. And probably you're wondering why Derby would have 3 motion sheets there. This was kind of a response to a meeting we had last week, which I call the Opioid Settlement Summit. We had the mayors of Rapid City and Sioux Falls. Mayor Tenhagen was online, and Representative Jameson was there, the Attorney General. Both the chairs were there, the sheriff from Pennington County, Secretary Altoff, and Laura Ringling from the executive office. So we had a summit. We got everybody in a room, got to get together, talked about how we can move forward, what the needs are in the communities. And I think Rapid City and Sioux Falls made pretty good pitches on what their needs are. The Attorney General clarified what's called the opioid nexus, and that is, what can these opioid settlement dollars be used for? And we were, the best way I can describe it is, we were in a fairly narrow path, but with the Attorney General's backing of and the reading of the opioid settlement, we were able to expand the opportunities. And so moving forward, we're hoping to expand some of those opportunities in Rapid City and Sioux Falls. We're in the process of drafting a letter of intent that may help further explain that, and that's in the process of being drafted. So I want to thank all the partners that were at that meeting. It's probably one of the bigger things I've been a part of this session, and we really covered a lot of ground. And Chair Otten, would you like to add to that? No? Okay. And so we would entertain a motion on E14. Okay. Representative Mucky, seconded by Senator Voida. Discussion on the motion. Representative Auk, did you have a question? No. Discussion on the motion on E14. Representative Mucky.
Just a quick comment to say thanks, Mr. Chair, in that work. I know getting opioid settlement funds out in the most quickly but also decisive way that we can is an important priority for all of us. So thanks for bringing this to us.
Senator Foster.
Thank you. I would like to remind the body that opioid issues affect more than just the 2 big cities, and so yeah, I'll probably be voting no on this because I think there needs to be a little bit more discernment of how these grants are done, who's on the committee, how these grants applications are evaluated as well as communicated. And I'm concerned that other areas that are not part of Sioux Falls and Rapid City are going to be neglected in this, even though they feel that impact.
Secretary Altoff, could you address that, please, that concern?
Mr. Chair, Matt Olthoff, Cabinet Secretary, Department of Social Services. I would urge the group to see the 9 million that's been proposed here is a continuation, only a 2.0 version of what we launched last fall. We of course unveiled 3 levels of granting opportunities. Those were discussed at length at a couple different hearings, including our budget presentation. We announced some of those very first transformative grant awardees in our budget presentation, and we projected that we'll be announcing more transformative grant opportunities. These are above $50,000, and we're dealing with some multi-million-dollar grant opportunities. Just to level set, when there are, I'm going to get these numbers close, please don't hold me to them, but I think there were about 31 applications for the transformative grants. The settlement over its lifetime is projected to see about $90 million total. Again, 70% of that goes for the state share. 30% of that goes to the community-based share. And we had well in excess of asks in those transformative grants that were received, well in excess of the 90 million. And so that's what a really dedicated group of volunteers are doing right now. The Opioid Advisory Committee are working through those grant applications. We're learning as we go. And we anticipate with this additional funding in the budget, we would be able to launch sooner a second round, a second grant offering and open that up, and we'll be better. It is, I would just echo what the chairman said about the Sioux Falls and Rapid City. Very front of mind for us, and I do want to emphasize we continue to track the data. Those that receive services are not just Sioux Falls and Rapid City residents. Those are largely the places where you can have service providers amass a critical body of people. So we know where home zip codes are of people that are receiving treatment. We're looking at that very closely to make certain we're inclusive of the rule. But we're also looking at other gaps that we find. That, again, is how we've defined it, the transformative grants. Harkening back from how one-time dollars aren't always well spent, as we've learned, how do we make certain that we look at gaps in the resources that exist today, and how will we know whether or not we'll be successful in trying to fill that gap before we start describing what's the features and benefits of our proposal. That's sort of been adamacy, and we've been in discussions. I'll be in Rapid City tomorrow to work directly with that group in Sioux Falls on Friday as we look to finalize this first round of grant opportunities. But again, this is meant for phase 2, which should again be happening in fiscal 27.
Thank you. Senator Foster, follow-up.
Yes, thank you. Follow-up question. So I know that there's restrictions on how these funds can be used, 15% to backfill, 15% for administrative costs. Was there ever a discussion or a possibility to create an actual fund that holds this and just use the interest from that to fund this, just so that it's not a one and done and gone?
Mr. Chair, the answer, I wasn't present in the room because it was before my time as Cabinet Secretary, but there was discussion about an endowment mechanism, and that was, for good reasons, I think it was dismissed, but it was considered, and I want to be very clear, the department is not in any way advocating for that. We are grateful, though, that as these monies have come in quickly and they've amassed quickly, we are earning interest on them. And so the fund is growing, by virtue of the money sitting in a savings account.
Representative Norstrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier in the day, I was in a meeting with the executive branch and the leaders of the Appropriation Committee, and the concept of making sure the reservations were taken care of was discussed. And that would be my hope, that the department and the executive branch would give strong consideration. And I see some heads nodding up and down out there. So the reservations are my hope that they will be a big part of this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion on E14? Okay, seeing none. Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore. Vilhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster.
No.
Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky. Zickman. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten. Derby.
Aye.
17 yeas, 1 nay.
Motion to approve E14 hereby passes. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah, I would like to actually make a motion on, I believe it's E13 and E14, if you can go to that. I still have some, sorry, E12 and E13. I still have some compelling reasons why we may want to consider that.
Well, I appreciate that, but I would advise not to do that. We have a LOI coming that's going to address those.
Can't we do both? Can't we do both? And the reason I mention it is I think the settlement has already been won. There's funds that are allocated towards that. We need to give some assurances to these groups, and I heard some compelling arguments on the weekend and also today from the Attorney General that we need to give assurances that these funds can get deployed, and as they come into the bank, they can get released. But if we don't give them assurances, they can't begin to kind of put these programs together. I believe last year he was begging us last year, please get these funds deployed to existing programs, and so we're now on another year. So it just seems wise to, again, this is just giving authority to these funds.
And I can't disagree, and I like your thought process because that's where I was headed with this. But we learned this morning that these funds are going to come in at a slower pace than I had anticipated. But we are working with the Secretary on a LOI as we speak that to address this. I'd hate to put a motion out there that I'd have to vote against, but we're open for discussion here. So, Representative Norstrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You made one of my points is, I too was in the meeting and discussed it, and the surprising information is this money comes in over 15 years. So it's just a lot less than anticipated. There's a fairly large sum now, but then the rest of it just comes in slowly. So there will not be the money to finance those motions. So it's impossible to do that.
So I cannot, if you feel compelled to do it, like, feel free, but we've got other means in motion, so.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I did talk to the AG today. He feels it's less than 10 years that'll come in. And again, he feels we need to get this deployed as other funds. It's just authority. And as those funds continue to come in, we can release them through LOI, through further detail. But they've been begging to have these go out. And both these two cities that you have listed there, I was very encouraged by you putting them there because we have existing programs in both those places. And I know you mentioned DSS, but this would be targeted towards two areas.
Commissioner Twilliger, would you care to respond?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I missed the whole part of this conversation, but again, Jim Twilliger at the Bureau of Finance and Management.
Would you like Senator Carley to?
I think is it in reference to the E12 and E13?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's 12 million unobligated, and we get in approximately 4 million a year, give or take. The rest of that money comes in over 15 years. And so having two communities come in to try and get the first 40 million when you only have 12 million sitting there is a little perplexing. When there's an existing process with the task force that reviews all this, we need to look at that. We maybe need to look at these funds a little bit differently. We're going to do that. But committing 40 million when we only have 12 million in the bank today, and we only have 4 million coming in per year over the next 4 years, just seems like we're really getting the cart in front of the horse on this. And so I think that's a conversation that a few of us had this morning. And there's a lot of other communities that need to be considered as part of this too. So there's a big, broader conversation that need to be had. And I think, Rapid City and Sioux Falls, there's a lot of good discussions going on there. I don't want to dismiss that, but I think there's even a broader conversation that needs to be had. And so those are my thoughts on that, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Twilliger, I requested a LOI this morning, and I was told that we'd probably have it in 2 hours. Well, it's been about 2 hours. Do you,
Mr.
maybe
Chair,
that would
yep,
help the discussion?
I believe we'll have a draft here within the hour, and I'll get that to you, Mr. Chair. And then, like I said, that's a draft. We can work on that in the next, week or two, whatever you guys end up adopting LOIs as part of the normal process, after session wraps up.
So there's probably nobody more than me that would like to adopt these, but we have pivoted, and I'm confident that working with DSS and BFM, that they're well aware and motivated to make some changes and look at things differently. So any further discussion? Senator Miskimins.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering if we look at the highlighted behavioral health total, I was wondering if we could perhaps have Mr. Dosh come forward and give his perspective on the impact on behavioral health in South Dakota.
We could do that. We need to finish out our discussion here, and we're up against a 10 o'clock floor. It's 9:55. We've got 5 minutes here. I was trying to close this out.
Close it out. So thank you, Chair. Again, I still would like to make the motion, and that's because this is just authority, and as funds come in, they can be deployed. And the Attorney General is interested in this. He's mentioned it for 2 years. I would like to put that on record that I want to help get these funds out. It's a fixed amount that's been settled in that, so we already know there's for sure over 100 million funds. So I make a motion for that to approve E12 and E13.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Auk. Discussion on the motion. Representative Norstrop.
I would ask the committee for a no vote. Everybody in this room is in favor of solving the opioid problem. We're in favor of trying to help people that need help. Unfortunately, what this motion does is it spends money that we will not have in the near term. It also prioritizes Sioux Falls and Rapid and deprioritizes everything else in the state, including the reservations. And so this is a motion that we just need to vote no and move on. Thank you.
Senator Voida.
Okay, well, I'm just going to say that I'm opposed to this because I think it's counterintuitive to all of the arguments that we have seen about legislative oversight, responsible fiscal policy, all of that. And so I'm really perplexed here. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'll make it
Senator
short.
Carley.
It doesn't spend money we don't have because this is just authority. We only spend the money when it actually comes in. And secondly, yes, I would agree it is Rapid and Pennington. There is a bit of a prioritizing those two. That's because they have deep involved opioid programs already and we'd be supporting those. So for those reasons, I'd still support it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Mucky.
In the essence of time, I think it's important to state I represent one of those two communities, and if there is an agreement to move forward with the project grants as they stand today with those partners in place, I will be opposing this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Secretary, call the roll.
Miskimins.
No.
Auk.
No.
Casson. No. Moore. No. Vilhauer. No. Carly.
Aye.
Voida. No. Jorgensen.
Nay.
Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky. No. Zickmund. No. Colbeck.
No.
Norstrup.
No.
Lapke.
No.
Otten.
No.
Derby.
No.
2 yeas, 16 nays.
Motion for E12 and E13 hereby fail. Okay, we are up against a hard deadline here. I do appreciate Senator Miskimen's comment. Okay, we're all done with the line items. Senator Miskimen's. Okay, thank you. Recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the remainder of the governor's recommended budget and line items A2, B3, B13, C2, C12, D3, E2, E16 for the Department of Social Services.
All right, Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to set the budgets for administration, Secretary of Social Services, Economic Assistance, Medical Services, Children's Services, Behavioral Health, Board of Counselor Examiners, Informational Board of Psychological Examiners, Informational Board of Social Work Examiners, Informational Board of Addiction and Prevention Professionals, Informational, at the level detailed in the Department of Social Services motion sheet, which includes $685,332,266 in general funds, $1.1 billion, $918,645 in federal fund expenditure authority, $20,307,411 in other funds expenditure authority, and 1,523.5 FTEs.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Yes, Senator Carney.
I would love a 10-second description of line item B8, please, the one-stop budget transfer.
B8.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Bill Douglas, LRC Fiscal Staff. This is a budget transfer that's going across all the 8 budget units. It realigns the budget to the budget units where the expenses are actually occurring from I think it was all in behavioral health and then got distributed out to the other budget units. It's a net zero change across the department.
Thank you. Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start by saying I have the utmost respect for the Secretary of DSS, but I will be voting no on this simply because of what this body has just done. This body has just undone what the executive branch recommended last year, what the Secretary implemented, what this body approved, what the legislature as a whole approved, what rules review approved. We just undid that, and we expanded welfare. And so for that reason, sadly, I will be voting against this budget.
Any further discussion? Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to highlight this for the committee. We're not undoing what we did in last year's budget, but we are undoing, in that case, what was made in a decision rules committee. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I just respectfully say, I encourage you to please support the budget today for the Department of Social Services. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Secretary, call the roll.
Miskimmens.
Aye.
Auk.
Pass.
Casson.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Carly.
No.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
No.
Mucky. Zickman. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lackey.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
Derby.
Aye.
14 yeas, 4 nays.
Motion to approve the budget of the Department of Social Services hereby passes. We will be at recess.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. from choir to debate to theater. SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.